for those of you who don't know, Monsanto is a company in the agriculture business, and they are known for patenting different types of seeds. They've done so with cotton seeds, they've done so with corn seeds. So it's something that they have done to kind of take over the food industry, right? And they've been in the middle of a lot of different controversy, but they are also known for genetically modified foods, right? Genetically modified seeds. And a lot of our corn is genetically modified, thanks to Monsanto. Now, scientists in France just recently did a study to see what the effects of genetically modified corn are on rats, right? Now, this is really interesting because there has been a lack of scientific evidence that would indicate whether or not genetically modified foods, like genetically modified corn, are safe and okay for human consumption. So what they found was that these rats developed mammary tumors, and they also had severe damage on some of their organs, including the liver and kidney. So those are pictures indicating what happened to the rats that were fed genetically modified corn.
They do not appear to be okay. It's not the picture of what I would call safe.
So, of course, Monsanto is, completely debating the findings of this study. They're very, very aggressive in fighting anyone that says anything negative about them, right? But there was an excellent documentary done. It was called The World According to Monsanto. And, they talked about the lack of oversight with the FDA when it came to genetically modified seeds. So let's take a look at a part of that documentary that explains it in greater detail.
The reason why GM crops are here is based on a deception that occurred in the FDA. They said that these foods are not different. They use the word substantially equivalent. They use the word not meaningfully or uniformly different. And what that turned into was a terminology called generally recognized as safe, or GRAS. Typically, if something is to be considered generally recognized as safe, it needs lots of peer-reviewed published studies and an overwhelming consensus among the scientific community. With GM crops, they had neither.
So, of course, Monsanto will come back and say, no, we have a bunch of studies, okay? These are studies that indicate that these foods are completely safe. However, if you do a little research into these studies, you'll find that they were in the middle of controversy because a lot of those studies were falsified. Okay.
Wow. Now, and I'm sure that it wasn't scientists that Monsanto was paying to do those studies. No. They wouldn't. And I'm sure those people have no biases whatsoever.
Now, during the Reagan administration, Monsanto was trying to, put out these genetically modified foods for human consumption. And it's really interesting because George Bush Sr. went to one of their factories, and look at this exchange. I think it's very illustrative of what happens in politics.
When George Bush Sr. toured the company's headquarters, he was Ronald Reagan's vice president, and deregulation was this Republican administration's watchword. The intention was to boost industry by eliminating what White House hardliners called bureaucratic hurdles, like health and environmental safety testing, which were Monsanto's key problems.
We have before USDA right now a request to test this for the first time on a farm in Illinois this year. And
Again, hallucinating about it, we'll loosen up here.
yes, we will.
And then the expense goes out and nothing happens because you can't do it.
Yeah, and I would say, quite frankly, we have no complaint about the way USDA is handling it. They're going through an orderly process. They're making sure that as they deal with these new things, they do them properly. And now, if we're waiting until September and we don't have our authorization, we may say something different.
Call me, we're in the dereg business.
Call me, we're in the dereg business.
Yeah, ain't that's the God's honest truth. Saying, hey, listen, man, don't worry about testing it in rats, et cetera, et cetera. You just call us, the Republican Party, and we'll make that thing happen for you.
So what they also do is, they have these genetically modified seeds, and what they're doing is, first of all, they take out a patent for these seeds, okay? Because they do a lot of scientific research and put a lot of money into doing it, so I can understand the patents. But at the same time, they are taking conventional seeds off the market. They're striking deals with different farmers throughout the world. This is a multinational corporation. And what they're doing is they're promising that these genetically modified seeds will have higher yields. So they go into countries like India and they say, hey, look, we have this genetically modified cotton seed. It's known as BT cotton. And what it'll do is it'll not only produce a higher yield, but it is basically resistant to any type of, weeds, pests, any type of thing that would ruin your crops. So these farmers in India started signing the contracts and they started buying the seeds.
Now, understand why they would do that. They're going to increase their output, they're told,
Right.
and they think, well, that's great, and I'm not going to lose more of my crops to all these problems that I've had in the past. So it's very enticing. But then the second part happens.
So what happens is they slowly but surely start taking conventional cotton seeds off the market. So these farmers in India become dependent on buying the genetically modified cotton seed. Well, what happens then? Monsanto will mark up the prices to 4 times the price. Okay?
That's the part they didn't tell you in the beginning.
So then these farmers in India have no choice but to take out these loans that later on they can't pay back. So what is the result of that? Well, let's watch the video.
But this is the cotton growing area. The result of the BT cotton is the first year 600 suicides from June 2005 to June 2006. Second year, still today, within 6 months, 680 suicides. So it's a disaster.
It's a complete disaster, yes. All these technologies, either it is GM or biotechnology, they are actually making the farmers completely dependent on the market. Because not only that you have to pay more for the seed procurement, but you have to fertilize. And this very claim that no spraying is required, no pesticide required, is also false.
When Monsanto claims in advertising that GM crops are adapted for small farmers, what do you think it's?
Our experience shows that it is completely false.
So as he mentioned, in 1 year there were 600 farmers who committed suicide because they simply couldn't pay back their loans. They filed for bankruptcy, they lost everything, and they just had nothing else to turn to. And by the way, I just want to be crystal clear that suicides among farmers in India it happens for other reasons as well because of extreme poverty. But in that documentary, they were specifically focusing on farmers who had to file for bankruptcy because they couldn't pay back those loans.
Now, people are so concerned that in Norway, they have started a new holding center that's partly buried underground, partly above ground, that can withstand almost anything, to keep our original seeds, ones that have not been genetically modified. Because they're so worried that genetically modified seeds are going to take over and then perhaps even cross-pollinate and destroy some of the original seeds, and then God knows what we have after that, that they're making sure they can protect at least the original seeds in Norway. Mm-hmm. So it's worse than you realize. And unfortunately, when you dive into a lot of these multinational corporate stories, it gets worse. It doesn't get better.
And I know, we gave you, a quick rundown of what's happening with Monsanto, and this is by no means new news. But that study with the tumors is important, right? Because this is the kind of stuff that our FDA should have been doing, not researchers in France. I'm happy researchers in France are doing it, but it's ridiculous the lack of oversight we have in our own country, especially when it comes to the food that we consume.
Now, think about all the stories we've told you on the Young Turks where politicians get influenced by the money that they take. Now, you think some of that influence isn't going to affect the FDA or other government agencies? It's affected almost every government agency. So you think that perhaps some things get authorized when they shouldn't be? Of course they do. So is this one of those cases? Well, we'll have to see over time, but this new research from France is not encouraging.
And a spokesperson from Monsanto did have a reply to this study. He says, numerous peer-reviewed scientific studies performed on biotech crops to date, including more than 100 feeding studies, have continuously confirmed their safety as reflected in the respective safety assessments by regulatory authorities around the world.
It's shocking that they would say that.
Yeah.
Huh, interesting. Okay, well, duly noted.